Now, another of our guests that I let down last week, although it turns out she was poorly anyway and might not have been able to join us, was our good friend Lisa Francesca Nand, who's a travel journalist and host of the Big Travel podcast. To call her a travel journalist is like saying that Cristiano Ronaldo is a footballer. He's the greatest footballer, and Lisa is the greatest travel journalist. She joins us now. Lisa, thank you, and my apologies for last week. Wonderful to see you again, looking in the pink. Tell us, first of all, how the travel business is recovering from the damned awful 18 months we've had.
Oh, it's been awful, hasn't it? You know, I've spent the last 18 months talking to people within the travel industry and travel agents that have just spent 18 months booking, cancelling, and not even getting paid for it in some instances, and actually slipping through the government support neck as well. So it's been really difficult for people. There is a recovery. It's a slow recovery. It's a shame that the restrictions weren't lifted in time for the summer, really. They were in the rest of Europe and in a lot of the rest of the world, and it's a shame we haven't kept up with that. All we can hope for now is that most of the restrictions have been lifted, at least for the double vaccinated. So we can hope that there will be an upward trajectory. But I do think it's a slow trajectory because, of course, the peak period is over. So I'm sure that we're hoping for some winter sun, some ski trip holidays being booked, people going to visit friends and family, of course, but also a proper recovery come the peak period next summer.
How many casualties have there been in the business? I was expecting airlines to go to the wall, travel agents, holiday companies to go to the wall. But if they have been, I've missed it.
Yeah, and I think that's been really good. I mean, I was kind of expecting it too. You know, even before the pandemic, we had Brexit that caused a lot of problems. Even before Brexit, we had big companies like Thomas Cook. Remember, they went out of business and then came back in another form. BMI, Monarch, you know, all these big stalwarts of our industry actually went, and this is before Brexit in many ways and before the pandemic. I think the ones that we're not hearing about are going to be the difficult ones, the people who are running travel agents, often independently, sitting at their kitchen tables. It's those that I speak to who have really been struggling. So jobs will have gone. They will have done. But thankfully, we haven't lost any of those big high profile companies. But of course, redundancies have been made in the big companies as well.
I miss Monarch, you know. It was my favorite airline. I used to fly them a lot. And they went out of business at the snap of a finger. Anyone else miss them, or was it just me?
I miss them. I do actually miss them. In the days before EasyJet, how long has EasyJet been going now? It's difficult to think of a time before EasyJet. Indeed. I think it's 25 years. But Monarch was a great stalwart airline, you know, from Gatwick to all the tourist destinations all over Europe, certainly. And yeah, that was there were other BMI, other airlines went as well. So, you know, like I said, that was before the pandemic. And something that we also don't talk about in terms of the travel industry, it's not just about us going on holiday. We really need to have people over here. We normally generate billions of pounds of income with people coming over here, and that has been decimated in the last 18 months as well.
I mean, I haven't flown abroad for a long time, but I did take the Eurostar a couple of weeks ago. It was a dream journey, by the way, and the staff were absolutely wonderful. We were traveling with 3 very young children and bags. It was the first time they were going to see their grandparents and so on. So there was all kinds of built-up presents that had to be taken. It was a potential nightmare, but it turned out to be a bit of a dream journey. But although you say the restrictions have gone, there's still a lot of faffing around, isn't there? There's still a lot of tests having to be taken and paid for. And then when you come back, you have to take a test and then post it at some expense to a company to look at it and so on. How much is that holding the travel business back? The fear that it's going to be more trouble than it's worth?
Yeah, I totally get that as well, George. I really do. I mean, I've flown a few times now, and even for me, I'm a native, digital native, as it were. I've been using the internet for a long time. I'm also a travel professional. I talk about it all the time. When I went to Spain a few weeks ago, and I went to Germany just this weekend, it's actually really takes some concentration to work out. I was almost standing there in the queue, and I was traveling with my two young children as well, feeling that guilt. That guilt when you go through customs, you suddenly think that you're accidentally smuggling loads of drugs or something. I actually got that. I was thinking, have I got the right forms? Am I going to, be turned back from the border? Am I going to have to fly? You heard rumors of people actually flying all the way to a destination and being turned back. So when you actually think about it, it's not a huge deal if you're fully vaccinated. You usually have to fill out a passenger locator or health form to go into a country, and then also want to come back. And they've also still got these day 2 tests. But I think it has put a lot of people off booking, even people that I know that anecdotally that are very well travelled and always quite gung-ho about jumping on an aeroplane. Even they've thought, I'm actually not going to bother. Have to say, like you did, George, going to Paris on a Eurostar, which I absolutely love, it is worth it. And when you talk about meeting grandparents, that is the real human cost of the closed borders, is that people have missed friends and family. It's not just about holidays, much as I think holidays are very important from a personal point of view and a business point of view. It's people being separated for 18 months now. You've just got the US is only opening this week, and Australia is finally beginning to loosen some restrictions as well. But people have been separated from big lifetime events from each other.
Yeah, and of course, citizens have been, Australians, many Australians have not been able to go home, have not been able to see their own country for all this time. It's been dreadful, of course. Now, you must be aware, notwithstanding the hypocrisy of the world leaders that all flew in their private jets to Glasgow and even between Scottish airports, there's a lot of static in the atmosphere, which you might call anti-aviation propaganda, anti-travel propaganda. Do you think that will affect the travel business in the long term? You mentioned guilt earlier. There are people, I'm sure, that have been made to feel guilty about wanting to jet off for holidays. Why not stay home in the rain instead?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not immune to it. I do sense that it's not, necessarily looked on as good to be burning the planet up. The aviation industry, particularly, like you said, is getting a bit of a bashing. But you know what, George? It makes me it's a little bit unfair. It feels like you're being preached to by middle-class people who have a lot of money, who some of them are the older generation who've already done a lot of traveling, and they're like, well, why don't you get the train down for me, for example, to southern Spain to see my parents who live there? Spend 3 days on I love a train journey, don't get me wrong, but spend 3 days on a really expensive train journey with my kids. It's an absolute hassle. And I think, people are blaming, almost saying, well, you can't go for your 2 weeks on the Costa del Sol or whatever. Well, actually, it's not really us that's doing it. It's the big businesses. It's that 1% that's churning out all the factory, the clothes, the plastic, it's everything like that. And I do get that we need to do our bit, that everyone needs to do their bit, but don't punish us for wanting a couple of weeks, break when we're all working really hard. So I see two sides of it, and I realise we've got to do something, but there is a lot of hypocrisy involved as well. I do really believe that.
Well said, indeed. Now, there are things you can do online. They could have done COP26 online and had a carbon footprint of close to zero, but they all wanted to breathe on each other instead, although insisting on people wearing masks. Elsewhere, talking about hypocrisy, but you can't travel virtually. You can't have a holiday online. Even if you put goggles on, you'll not actually be in the Costa del Sol. But one of the things that you can do virtually, and may be the future, and we were going to talk to you about it last week, was the rock concert, the music concert, the pop concert, the music festival. And we were using the ABBA thing as an example of that. What's your take on that?
I'm really excited about the ABBA thing. I don't know if you're actually a fan of ABBA, George. Are you
My
an ABBA
wife
fan?
is. My wife is. She once sent me into a record store to buy an ABBA album. I'm still blushing yet.
I absolutely love it. And I think it's really interesting, the virtual concert. That is something that we've all done a lot of more of, throughout the pandemic. There's been more Zoom calls, more meetings and that sort of thing. And yes, maybe that's good to reduce business travel as well. There is a lot of unnecessary journeys. But, there's nothing that beats standing there in an audience, having an amazing time squashed into a venue with thousands and thousands of people. There is something to be said with that. There's also something to be said with the ABBA concerts. There are actually going to be concerts. It's ABBA, the four of them, that are not going to be there. It's actually some sort of hologram, isn't it, from what I understand? But,
is it?
Yes, it is. So they're, as far as I understand, they're the hologram. Obviously people will be able to watch it online, but there will actually be an audience. In fact, ABBA themselves have said that they're looking forward to sitting in the audience and watching themselves perform as they did in the 1970s, because it's going to look like not them now, but them back then. But there is something to be said for, what I referenced earlier, is like getting people into this country. We have world-class events. We have world-class football, arguably. We definitely have world-class theatre. We need these people into our country. We need to allow them. I do understand it needs to be safely, but we need their money. We really do. And we want to go to these concerts ourselves. I think in terms of inbound tourism, this August just gone, we had only 14% of our normal levels. And everyone in Europe was beginning to travel more normally. The levels were much better than that. So we need the ABBA event. We need the Euros and the World Cups. We need the cricket, we need the tennis, we need Glastonbury, we need all of this stuff, not just to get people in here and spending money, but also for fun. This is what life is made of. This is what makes a lot of us really happy, me included.
I was prevailed upon to go not once but twice to a theatre show, a rather thin script, but which featured ABBA's music on the West End some years ago now. And the whole point was that everyone dressed up like them and got up and danced in the theatre, in their seats, in the aisles and so on. You can't really do that if you're watching this online, can you?
No, you can't. I mean, you can dance around your living room, and many of us do enjoy that thing. And that is the thing. It means it can open ticket sales to a lot more people. So that's good from a business point of view. You can have the live events there, and also the people watching it virtually around the world. So it's good. But I think we should have not just. I don't know about you, but I really, really struggled with the lack of human contact. When we were in lockdown, and it's great to have that option. But let's get people moving. Let's get people jumping around the audience and dressing up in your ABBA gear and singing, and get all that going as well. I do. I'm really excited that's coming back.
How many tickets have they sold, and what's the target?
I've got absolutely no idea, but I hope they've sold a lot. I actually went to see something similar at the O2. Do you remember it was only about 3 or 4 years ago. It's kind of different difficult with the pandemic to work out timescales. But I saw something with Elvis, and they recreated Elvis with all sorts of screens. And I think it was the London Philharmonic was playing, and me and my mum went, which was a lovely, lovely thing to do. And it was just really, really special. So yeah, let's bring on more of those events. The holograms, using modern technology as well. People watching it on Zoom or whatever from all around the world, but also getting bums on seats and selling tickets is going to be a big deal for us as well.
You've sold it, and moreover, I'm going to get a hologram of me so that when I'm gone, people can go to small halls in provincial parts of the country and listen to me give speeches, but it'll just be a hologram, like Elvis, who has left the building. Thank you, Lisa. It's always a delight to see you.